Chapter 6: Public Opinion and Political Socialization.
Public opinion can be defined as the attitudes, perspectives, and viewpoints individuals hold about politics and government. Some political scientists view this process as one of political socialization. It is interesting to see the parallel between the factors that influence voting patterns and the factors that mold public opinion and political socialization. Attitudes about government Attitudes about government policy may change over time, and government not always, but sometimes does listen to public opinion. Political socialization. Sources: the family and social environment. The family is the most important agent of political socialization. Children raised in households in which parents strongly identify with the same political party are likely to identify with their parents' political party. Education. Educational influences on political opinion is also important. Education introduces individuals to ideas outside of the home and outside of the local community. Peers and peer group influence. As people interact with others in school, at work, or in social activities, various values come into play. These values can influence how opinions are formed. Opinion leaders' influence. Leaders, both formal and informal, tend to shape the opinion of the public. The media. The media presents information on important political topics. How topics are presented and which topics are presented have a major impact in opinion formation. The influence of political events. Generally, older Americans tend to be somewhat more conservative than younger Americans, particularly on social and economic issues. This is known as the lifestyle effect. Political events can produce a long-lasting impact on opinion formation. An important example was the impact of the Great Depression on people who came of the age in that period. We call such an impact a generational effect. While it is likely that events of September 11th will play an important role in the political socialization of young Americans, it is still unclear what that impact might be. Political ideology. The liberal ideology. They put less value on order than on freedom. They support government intervention to provide economic equality. They support political and social reform, expand programs for the poor, minorities, and women. They oppose an increase in military spending and committing troops to foreign wars. Conservative ideology. They put a higher value on order than on freedom. They support the expansion of American military power, free market solutions to economic problems, and less government regulation of business. They oppose expensive federal social and welfare programs, abortion rights, and the national health care system. Demographic influences. Education. It is typical that someone with lower education is a liberal. The more education, a conservative. However, this correlation has weakened. In particular, those with a postgraduate education have become increasingly democratic or liberal. Economic status. Those with low incomes tend to favor government action to benefit the poor or to promote economic equality. Those with high incomes tend to oppose government intervention in the economy or support it only when it benefits business. It is common that a liberal would have less money than a conservative. Religious influences appear to have a significant impact on the development of public opinions. One example would be the Jewish community, which is likely to vote for a Democrat candidate or a liberal candidate. In general, members of minority groups favor the Democrats or the liberals. Hispanics are voting Democrat by a margin of 2 to 1. Gender. The gender gap. The gender gap, or the difference between the percentage of women who vote for a particular candidate and the percentage of men who vote for the candidate. Since 1980, women have tended to give somewhat support to Democrat candidates for president, and men have given somewhat more support for Republicans. Women have been more supportive of social spending and extending civil rights. Geography. In presidential elections, Democrats or liberals tend to get support from the Northeast and the West Coast. Republicans or conservatives tend to do well in the South and the Great Plains, and even the Rocky Mountains. The Midwest tends to split and sometimes decides the election. Even more importantly, cities are typically Democrat, while their countryside in most places is Republican. Election-specific voting behavior factors. The first one, party identification. This is the strongest determinant of an individual's vote. If an individual identifies with a particular party, there is a greater likelihood this person will vote and support the candidate of his or her party. Perception of the candidate. The candidate who is more successful in projecting an image that the public wants has a better chance of winning the election. Typically, this has to do with character, especially trustworthiness. And last, the issue preference. Although not as important as party identification or image, where a candidate stands on a given issue does have an impact on voters. It is common that the economic issue is the most important. Some voters vote on the basis of their own economic interest, while others vote on the economic issues facing the nation. Measuring public opinion. As early as the 1800s, the press conducted straw polls. Such polls were not an accurate reflection of the public opinion. In the 1936 presidential race between Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Alf Landon, the Literary Digest sent out 10 million postcards asking people who they supported in their magazine. Because the poll only conducted research on people who read their magazine, which was a higher, wealthier class, many of the people who supported FDR were not polled. And in a landslide election, FDR won. This showed that the flawed results because it relied on a faulty sample. It failed to consider Roosevelt's blue-collar supporters. After the 1936 election, relatively accurate polling techniques were developed by such people as George Gallup and Elmo Roper. Although we are getting dangerously close to studying statistics here, we must cover this topic because it may be asked on the AP exam. Measuring public opinion. Representative sampling. To accurately predict the whole based on only a sample, the sample must be representative. The principle of randomness. A purely random sample will be presented within the stated margin of error, typically a plus or minus 3%. For a poll to be random, every person in a defined population has to have an equal chance of being selected. The larger the sample of the population, the smaller the margin of error. Public opinion and the political process. The president, members of Congress, governors, and other elected officials realize that strong support by the public as expressed in opinion polls is a source of power in dealing with other politicians. As you can remember, after September 11th, everyone wanted to be seen with President Bush. The reason? He was a very popular figure. Towards the end of his presidency, even Republicans didn't want him to endorse him or support him along with the campaign trail. Public opinion also helps candidates identify the most important issue and help them shape their campaigns. Political culture can be described as a set of attitudes and ideas about the nation and government. Certain shared beliefs about the important values are considered the core of American political culture. They bind the nation together despite its highly diverse population. These values include liberty, equality for property, support for religion, and community service and personal achievement.